Ready?
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sorry for the slight delay in today's program, but I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you to a rare program in our community. I believe potentially for the first time in our local community we have a Muslim-based organization that is hosting an orthodox Jewish rabbi to engage them on their views related to religion and politics. So in effect, you're partaking and being part of making history at the Abrahamic Foundation today. Our esteemed guest, Rabbi Cohen, now before I give an introduction to who he is, just to highlight how respected he is within his own community. A mentor to me from the Jewish community, somebody who's taught me a lot about the Jewish faith, and somebody who I discuss a lot with, Rabbi Beck, based in London. I had initially reached out to him to invite him to speak at today's program, but he suggested that due to the seniority of Rabbi Cohen, and because of his experience and his breadth of wisdom, both in the secular world and in the Jewish faith, that I invite him to speak today, and hence why we are blessed to have him today. So before I go into the introduction, I'll just mention the format of today's program. We'll start off by me giving a couple of icebreaker questions to Rabbi Cohen, and then I will ask him a series of questions and engage him in a discussion based upon the answers he gives. After I finish asking him the questions I have, we'll open it up to the public to pose any questions. You can pose your questions either verbally, or if you prefer, you could have it in writing and send it down to me. So now moving on to the introduction. Rabbi Cohen was born and bred in England, as his father before him. His mother was born in Poland and came as a child here. His grandparents came to this country from Eastern Europe approximately 130 years ago. Rabbi Cohen is a family man, and being part of the Orthodox Jewish community, he and his family endeavors to live according to the Jewish religion. He trained as a rabbi, but was active for many years in commerce. In more recent years, he became more involved in religious duties within the Jewish community and was particularly involved in educating the youth. He can be described as semi-retired, though he does not find that he has a lot of spare time. He now spends a lot of time spreading the important but little known message regarding the absolute position or opposition of Zionism held by authentic Jewish community. He is one of many Orthodox Jews who completely sympathize with the cause of the Palestinians in their struggle against the Zionist state. So without further delay, we'll start the program. Rabbi Cohen, welcome to the Abrahamic Foundation.
May I just say how much I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today, and I consider it a great honor. And I hope that start the proceedings from my point of view with a prayer that whatever we say today should be correct in its content and its conclusion. The Almighty should help us in that respect.
That's great. Okay, just to start off the icebreaker, I will. This is probably something you're not really used to. What I'm going to do, I'm going to mention a word to you, and I want you to let me know your thoughts. The first thoughts that come to your head when I mention these words.
I'll try.
Okay. So the first one is Islam.
Islam. Well, the thought that comes to my mind is that Islam has spread around the world since it started, encompassing many millions of people. And from a Jewish point of view, the relationship between Jewish people and Islam has been, on the whole, very cordial. And in fact, I often mention that sadly, in Europe over the last 1,000 years, the Jewish people have suffered very greatly in many ways, and their places of refuge were very, very frequently, more often than not, in Muslim lands where they were accepted warmly and where they built strong Jewish communities. So, I mean, I could go on. Did you want to?
We'll get into that in the discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, the next word would be Israel. So not going too long, just the first couple of sentences.
Okay, Israel, yes. Well, the name Israel has been hijacked because Israel originally was the name of the Jewish people, the Bnei Israel, and it's been taken over by the Zionists, who are a secular movement, as I will no doubt have opportunity to explain a bit more later on, and would say that the state of Israel, I would consider, and our colleagues consider, is the biggest disaster that has befallen the Jewish people practically since its inception. And it is an ongoing, festering sore which came into being 100 years ago and is very, very tragic.
Okay. The next word, Jesus.
Well, I can't say a lot about Jesus. He was, as I'm sure you know, he was originally part of the Jewish community, and then he formed, the Christian religion was built on his opinions. Very difficult to say. The Jewish community consider that he left the fold as far as Judaism is concerned. But on the other hand, we see that he was also successful in introducing millions of people to religion. So, what more can I say?
Okay. And the last one for this round is Messiah.
Messiah. Well, again, every group has their own idea of what Messiah means. Our teaching is, part of our basic belief is that there will be a Messiah who will reveal himself at the right time, the wish of the Almighty, and he will lead the world into a completely different period where all the world will be at peace with each other and will know how to behave with each other. I mean, one has to look at peace. When you think about it, I just happened to mention the other day, I remember very well the Second World War. When it finished, everybody thought, well, okay, that's the end of war. But no, by no means. Ever since the end of the Second World War, which is 80 years ago now, practically, I don't think there's been any time where there's not been war, one form or another, going on in the world. And that sort of thing, part of our teaching is that the Messiah will bring to an end.
Okay, that's great. So we'll start off with the questions and discussions. So my first question would be, in the political arena, Islam and Judaism is often seen as at conflict with each other, whereas I wanted to start off by looking at what commonalities you believe that there are between the Islamic faith and the Jewish faith. So that would be the first part of the discussion, and the second part would be, how is life, generally speaking, for Jews under historic Muslim rule, be in Palestine or outside of that region?
Okay, the question of Islamic faith and similarities, I hesitate getting involved in similarities, religious similarities, for the simple reason that religion is a very exclusive word. It means, the word religion means how how do we serve the Almighty? And every group has its own teaching as how this should be, but to the exclusion of how anybody else should do it. So, and the same thing applies to Judaism and Islam. Each have their own teaching and the way of how life should be led. And I often say, leave the question of religion and faith alone. Let each group carry on as they have been taught and as they feel comfortable in doing. The essential thing is that all groups should live in peace with each other, should respect each other, and be able to tolerate each other. More than that, to help each other. And that leads on to the second part of the question, how life has been for the Jewish people in connection with Islam. Well, again, as I mentioned earlier, the Jewish people they lived in Palestine originally. From the time the Jewish people came into existence, about 3,500 years ago, you probably all know the biblical narrative, how they came out and then they went to Palestine. And our teaching is that we were promised. We don't consider Palestine as an essential part of our Jewish identity. The Jewish identity is established by the Jewish religion, but part of the Jewish history is that they were promised to live in Palestine subject to certain conditions. And those conditions were basically that they had to maintain certain high levels, spiritual and moral levels. Otherwise, they were told that they were sent into exile. And sadly, they didn't maintain the level of accepted of them, although there were many, many thousands of very fine people. But the level of behavior wasn't to the standard that demanded, and what was foretold was that they would be sent into exile, and they were sent into exile. And that is, history shows that in the last 2,000 years, the Jewish people have been in exile over the four corners of the world. And coming back to your question, a very great part of their experience in exile has been in Muslim lands under Islam. And going back hundreds, probably thousands of years, the relationship was cordial and helpful to one another. This only came to an end. It hasn't even come to an end now either, but it only appeared to come to an end when the Zionists raised their heads and wanted to take over a land which was already occupied by an indigenous population and caused alarm bells to start ringing, and that started the conflict between Jews and Muslims in Palestine. But that was an isolated series of events. It doesn't affect that over the thousands of years, all over the world which was occupied by Muslim people, and in Europe as well, but I'm talking about Muslim lands, and where Islam was the main religion. The Jewish people thrived. They had their own religion, they had their own communities, and they were able to develop along the lines that they wanted to. So life was able to carry on very well in conjunction with the Muslim lands in which they lived.
So in Muslim lands, were you, under the Muslim rule, were you allowed to have your Jewish schools and continue your teachings and the practices of your faith?
To my knowledge, because I've never personally experienced that, But to my knowledge, yes, most certainly. I mean, in all the Muslim lands where Jewish communities thrived, I mean, right up to the Zionist period, going back best part of 100 years, there was all over there were many, many Jewish communities which thrived. Any Muslim land you wish to name had thriving Jewish communities with their own schools and their own community activities in every way.
Okay, so this will go into, because you mentioned Israel quite a few times. So Israel is often presented to the masses as a Jewish state, a homeland for the Jewish people. And when you often turn on the TV and you see settlers, you would see people who look like yourself, like Jewish people, people who come on the media who will talk in favor of Israel being a Jewish land. So whilst you might have Jewish people that might differ with the internal politics or certain policies of the Israeli government, would you not say that the existence of Israel and Judaism is one and the same thing?
No, definitely not. When Zionism and Judaism, one has to talk about that a little bit. Zionism is a secular political idea with the aim, was formed by people who had originally, I will come to the religious Zionists in a minute, but who were formed by people who had no connection with religion whatsoever. They were nationalistic, but secular nationalistic. It came into being probably because of the difficulty Jewish people had in Europe and many lands, anti-Semitism. And so the irreligious numbers among the Jewish people, and sadly, they numbered a lot, they numbered probably the majority, they have taken over the idea of having a national land like other countries. I must stress that when Zionism, the idea was first mooted over 100 years ago, it was opposed by the majority of the Jewish people, certainly by the orthodox community, because the idea of forming a state of our own is against our religious teaching. That's a point which needs to be brought out. I mentioned that it is part of our belief that we were teaching that the Jewish people were sent into exile, and our teaching also says that we are not allowed to fight against that exile, to oppose it by the efforts of our own hands. It's considered to be the will of the Almighty, and to oppose it would be rebellion against the wishes of the Almighty. And that's the teaching which the Jewish people had through hundreds, thousands of years since they were sent into exile. And the idea that the Zionists had, that they would form a country of their own, flies completely in the face of this teaching. Something completely foreign to Jewish teaching. So they were not approved of by the majority, but they had spectacular success in their propaganda, and what has happened in the 100 years or so since the idea of forming a state of their own was mooted, is that they became very popular, particularly because of the Second World War, because of anti-Semitism and so on. So a lot of people found the idea attractive of having a state of their own. But it was against our religious teaching, also against because it's involved overtaking somebody else's land. It's against our teachings of humanitarian behavior to come in and take over the land of a people and deprive them of their homes and their livelihoods and sadly of their lives. That was something completely foreign to the established orthodox, authentic Jewish teaching going back. But it has become very popular. And but it is not to be confused with Judaism. Judaism is a way of life, a religion, a way which we believe we were taught thousands of years ago, a way of life full of morals and ethics and how we should behave. Zionism is completely secular, with no particular concern for one's fellow man. So it's a completely different concept altogether. So to say that, however, just coming on again, Zionism brought about the existence of the Zionist state. That's what they were aiming at. I mean, there's a lot of history to be recounted in that respect, but that's how it came about. But it was not in accordance with the Jewish teaching, the authentic Jewish teaching that's been handed down for thousands of years. So to say that the State of Israel, which was the brainchild of Zionism, is something connected with Judaism is wrong. There are Jewish people who were involved with it, but it's completely differing and opposing to the teachings of the Jewish religion.
So I guess what you're saying is that the existence of Israel and Zionism is in contrast with the Jewish faith, but yet you have many Orthodox Jewish rabbis that are on board with the Zionist project in Israel, like notably people like Rabbi Rav Cook, and also many organizations that represent the Jewish community, like the World Jewish Congress or, say, the Chief Rabbi of the Commonwealth. All these Jewish figures seem to be supportive of Israel, maybe not particular policies, but the overall existence of Israel and the Zionist state. So is this not at odds with what you're saying, because you have a number of people from the Jewish community, both Orthodox and progressive Jews, who seem to be supportive of the state of Israel, where you're saying this is against the Jewish teachings? Would you not in effect see, or what people outside of your movement would say is that you represent a fringe opinion of the Jewish community, or you're not really represented in the masses from adherent or practicing Jews?
Okay, I'll go back to what I said earlier, that when Zionism was first founded, it was opposed by the vast majority of Jewish people, both Orthodox and non-Orthodox actually. Historically, it wasn't approved of. But the Zionists had spectacular, and they still have spectacular success with their propaganda. And they have impressed themselves on all sections of the Jewish community, including a large section of the Orthodox Jewish community. But this is a new development. It's hard to realize that now. Going back, say, 150 years, there was no such movement among Orthodox Jews at all. And I say Orthodox Jews because you must know an important thing is that the very identity of the Jewish people is dependent on orthodoxy, dependent on the religion. Most nations have their identity because of their connection with a specific land, but the Jewish people not. They have their identity by their connection with the Jewish way of life, with the Torah, as it's called, the Jewish religion. And that's been the case thousands of years. And that has shown itself as being the case by the very fact that the Jewish people have maintained their identity all that time, have only been spread all over the world. And in fact, anybody, it goes further than that, anybody who knows he is a Jew, even non-Orthodox Jewish people, even secular Jewish people, they only know that they are Jewish because their parents told them, their grandparents, and at the most, their great-grandparents, who were Orthodox Jews. In other words, the identity of the Jewish people was only maintained by those who maintained their connection with the Jewish religion. Those who left the Jewish religion, let's say 500-600 years ago, their descendants are completely lost. They don't know, they have no idea that there's any Jewish connection whatsoever. So it's the Jewish religion which has established the identity of the Jewish people. But in the last 100 years or so, the Zionists have been successful in producing another form of Jewish identity. The identity of people who want to be connected with a land which is different than what has been the case with Judaism over the centuries, but similar to the connection which other nations have with their nationalities, who are being connected to a land, the English with England, French with France, and so on. They created a new identity, but it's not Jewish, it's Israeli, it's not Jewish, something completely different. So coming back to your question about the fact that there are Orthodox Jews who who support Zionism, yes, it's true. But only in the last 100 years or so, and the Zionists have been very spectacularly successful in impressing their idea on all sections of the Jewish people, including many parts of the Orthodox Jewish people. But it was a mutation. It was something which has developed, which has never existed in Jewish people through the thousands of years that they existed. It was a mutation. And it's true that people who are against Zionism are very much in the minority now. But there is a strong minority, very strong minority, but they are in the minority. But I always say they have what I call the authority of history. The fact that they are maintaining the chain of teaching going back over thousands of years, that's the authority of history, and that gives them their credentials. That gives that establishes their right to speak in the name of the authentic Jewish people. It's not recognized by the majority of people nowadays, but that is the case.
So would you not see people like Rabbi Rav Cook as coming from that same lineage of Jewish authority?
No. Rav Cook, for instance, is among these accepted anti-Zionist authentic authorities. Rav Cook is looked down upon very much as having left the fold. Although he was a great scholar, and he gave the impression of being a great Jewish rabbi, but he very much looked down upon by the established Jewish Orthodox community. And others like him, anybody who's adopted the Zionist idea, have gone against the grain. They've bolted on nationalistic Zionism to Judaism and called it part of Judaism, but it's not. It's completely new thing. I always describe it as Judaism plus. They've taken the old Judaism and they bolted on the nationalism of Zionism. But that is a falsehood.
When you say you're in a strong minority in opposition of the Zionist state, what would you say the numbers are?
Yeah, I'm often asked this. It's very hard to say. I mean, you've got the probably number in the hundreds of thousands. I wouldn't say more than that. Maybe up to 1 million even. But very small. But also in varying degrees. You see, you've got those who, I would say there are a few classifications. There are those who even among those who oppose Zionism in the orthodox camp, there are those who oppose it, but are prepared to go along, sort of accept it as a practicality and live with it. There are those who say, no, you have nothing to, you mustn't in any way cooperate with the Zionist idea. And there are those who are prepared to stand up in public and say that it is a complete opposition to the old Jewish teaching.
So why do you think in the media or just generally out in the community we don't see so many voices from the Orthodox Jewish community that are speaking out against this? It's very few people like, Rabbi Beck in London or the New Takara movement. It's not something that's very vocal. And this gives a representation that this is not reflective of Orthodox Jewish community. What would you say is the reasoning behind that?
Well, first of all, there's a silent majority, or not a silent majority, but a strong silent minority who are absolutely opposed to Zionism. But they find it difficult to oppose it publicly because it does create problems, I can tell you. Because if you, those Jewish people who publicly oppose Zionism nowadays are ostracized by a great part of a great proportion of the Jewish community, and often attacked verbally and often physically because of their supposed treachery against Jewish interests. So it's not easy for people to undertake to be ostracized. But those who are prepared to accept that problem, they're not afraid. They do still oppose publicly Zionism. As I said, there is a strong, although they're only a minority, they are a vocal and strong minority.
Have you ever been verbally or physically attacked for opposing Zionism?
Many times. Oh yes, I've been through all sorts of things. Particularly since, if you keep quiet, you don't get attacked. We only become involved in active opposition in the last 20 years or so, although my belief and teaching goes back to when I was a very young man, that Zionism is completely in opposition to established Judaism, and this is very great rabbis who taught us this. But I only became, so as long as one kept oneself to oneself, life could go on peacefully. But I only became involved openly some 20 years ago, and since that time I've had to suffer quite a strong degree of ostracism. One point very strongly, and there have been demonstrations outside my home. I had my house tacked with bombarded with eggs, that's the mine, and I mean, bombarded with stones and shot at with air guns, and life became very uncomfortable at one point. And my car, for instance, there was a period when my car was on almost a nightly basis, so the tires were slit, were slashed, and finally one of my cars was torched, so it went up in flames. Things have quietened down a little bit since then. Not so long ago, that episode of my car being torched, it was after in 2014, after one of the onslaughts of the Zionists on Gaza. So there was a big public meeting not far from Manchester in a place called Rochdale, which you may know of, in support of the Palestinians, and there were thousands of people there, and they asked me to speak, which I did. And it was a night or two after that, my car was torched and went up in flames. and even to this day, in my community where I live, there are many people I get on very well with, but there are others who don't want to talk to me, who from their point of view, I don't exist. Hello. Yes, so in short, I've had to bear with a lot of attack, but that's the way it goes. If you want to speak what you consider to be the truth, you have to bear the consequences sometimes.
Right. So I just want to pick up on a couple of points you mentioned. So one of the things you said, that since the Jewish people were put in exile, there was, from a religious perspective, you shouldn't organize yourself to kind of forcefully take over what's known as Palestine or that region. But one of the arguments given by those in favor of Zionism is that the state was given to them by the British mandate as opposed to forcefully being taken. And the resulting expansion of the land was as a result of Arab attacks on Israel. So they just basically won the battle and expanded. So, well, initially the first borders was given by the British mandate. So what is your view on that? Because they're arguing it wasn't taken forcefully.
Okay. I think one has to look at the historical facts very carefully. First of all, the very existence of the so-called British, it wasn't so-called, it was the British mandate, that was based on fallacy. Started off with what was the Balfour Declaration, but the Balfour Declaration was an open case of a country promising another country to a people of a third country. They had no authority to do so. In other words, the whole British mandate, and there's a tremendous number of books written about that. The whole British mandate was faulty. It should never have been in existence. It was a faulty idea in the first place. It was misused. The mandate, the word mandate, means representing, taking over, looking after a country for a period of time and then handing it over to the occupants. But the British government, and at the time when the mandate started, for various reasons, political reasons, maybe for possibly altruistic reasons, thought that they would think, a wonderful idea, they would give Palestine to the Jewish people, but they had no right to do so. They were taking, I often give an example, supposing supposing a country or a government in this country would come along and say, you know what, the Jewish people need a homeland. Let's take Birmingham. Why not? it's a good place, let's take Birmingham and put the Jewish people there, let them make their own country there. Never mind the people who are living in Birmingham at the moment, then we'll deal with them in due course. We'll give it to the Jewish people. But obviously that's a fallacious idea. They could never be successful in doing such a thing, and it would never be accepted as anything wrong, as anything good and anything correct. But that is exactly what they did. It's exactly what they did in Palestine. They said, we've got a country here which is very suitable for the Jewish people. Jewish people need a country. They accepted the socialistic and nationalistic idea of Zionism. Let's give them Palestine. So obviously the result is going to be strife. And to say that it was, to say that they had a right to give it to them is completely fallacious. They were not even, at the time of the Balfour Declaration, they weren't even in power in Palestine. It was in the middle of the First World War. So the whole thing was fallacious right from the start.
Okay. Another argument that's often given by those who are pro-Zionist is that whilst the state project is a secular aspect and not a religious aspect, is in the interest of the Jewish community, because the Jewish community were persecuted in many lands, following the Holocaust and so forth. So the Jewish state provides protection for the Jewish people. It's in their benefit from a security aspect. So therefore, whilst the ideology might be secular, it's in the interest of the community of the Jewish people.
Well, again, facts don't bear that out. It's very interesting that although the history of anti-Semitism in Europe was terrible for 1,000 years, right up to the time of the Second World War, when the Jews were attacked, since the Second World War, it's been very interesting when one looks back. I don't think there's any country in the world where Jews cannot live. There's no open anti-Semitism as there was up to the time of the Second World War. And so that's the first thing. And then to say that you want to help the Jewish people to be secure at the expense of another people doesn't make sense. You want to help them to be secure. You have to help them be secure in any land where they are, and they are secure in all the lands that they live. They've lived since the Second World War. There's no problem. Jewish people live in this country, United States, anywhere, all over the world. Even in one of the things the Zionists often bring out is Iran, yes? Iran, I've been to Iran a good number of times. The Jewish people who are not Zionists live very peacefully there and conduct their religious life with no problem whatsoever. And this is the same all over the world. And I would say the most dangerous place in the world for Jewish people nowadays is in Palestine. This is a fact, because the situation there, first of all, there's constant strife. So whenever there's strife, although the Zionists are militarily powerful, but whenever there's strife, Jewish people also die. So what good are you doing? You trying to protect Jewish people when almost on a daily basis, apart from the terrible events affecting the Palestinians, but Jewish people also die. Even in the last onslaught on Gaza, Jewish people were killed. There's nowhere in the world where Jewish people are killed like in Palestine. So is that what you call safety? That doesn't make any sense. And also the whole situation there is very, very explosive. One that we hope and pray that I always say our prayer is that the Zionist state should come to an end peacefully. But one has to have the help of the Almighty for that to happen, because how it can come to an end, it could be in a very dangerous manner. dangerous for everybody, including all the Jewish people who live there. So it doesn't make any sense to claim that the Zionist state is a means of protecting the security of the Jewish people.
Okay, so have people from your movement or community ever engaged with the Palestinian authorities, be they the PLO or Hamas, and how have those engagements been?
Oh yes, I mean, people in Palestine themselves, there were members of the Neturei Karta in Palestine, although we say that ideally they shouldn't be there. We should leave the Zionists to their own, and leave them to themselves, but they're there for a number of reasons, circumstances, and certainly there was Rabbi Hirsch, you may have heard of Rabbi Moshe Hirsch, who was he was a member of Arafat's government in the Palestinian Authority, and certainly up to the present day, there are people there who have gone out and communicated with the Palestinians. You have a young man here. That young man, he can confirm. He's been, I think, yes, you've been in the West Bank, where they get on very, very well with the Palestinians. Well, as long as the Palestinians understand that they accept that we understand their problem, there's no problem whatsoever.
So the Jewish community, they've had cordial relationships with the Palestinians?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, they always did have, before the Zionists came into existence, the Jewish community in Palestine lived very cordially with the Palestinians. People, Rabbi Weiss, he talked about to me earlier about Rabbi Weiss, he always recounts how people who say that before the formation of the state, the communities lived alongside each other. Very often families used to babysit for each other or anything. It was a very cordial and happy coexistence. And all that only came to an end through the Zionists.
Okay, that's great. Just before I move on to some further questions, what I'd probably like is, I mentioned at the start of this program that Rabbi Beck, who's probably one of the more popular faces that you see representing this movement, somebody who I've studied and benefited a lot, he's just arrived from London. So I'd like to invite him as well, so we could share the questions, if that's possible. Okay, so from your discussions, another angle that I wanted to go on is that there is a big effort out there by, you could say, either the Jewish community or those in politics to equate anti-Zionism to be anti-Semitic. So I know, like, for example, Jeremy Corbyn, he had a lot of criticism for his views and statements on Israel, and he was seen as to be anti-Semitic. And generally, if somebody was to criticize or even question the existence of the state of Israel, they in effect are saying you're being anti-Semitic because you're denying Jewish people a land of their own, and that Israel is unique in that sense because it's the only country that represents the Jewish faith. Would you agree that anti-Zionism can be anti-Semitic? I'll let Rabbi Beck start off with this one.
Anti-Zionism is in no way it's anti-Semitic at all. I mean, anti-Zionism, it's anti-occupation. It haven't got nothing to do with Judaism at all. It's anti-occupation. The Palestinians, like the Rabbi Cohen said before, Palestinians have no problem with Jewish people at all. They have a problem with occupiers. No difference if they're Jewish, if they're black, if they're white, if they're Chinese, anything. They're against occupiers. They haven't got nothing to do with Zionism. I mean, I must say that everybody knows a bit history, knows that we have a golden history in the Muslim countries. For centuries we live together peacefully. We have no problem with each other. I myself was born in Palestine, in Jerusalem. My family gone out. We didn't want to live under the Israeli occupation. I'm already 7 generations there in Jerusalem. And my mother told me she remembered the times when we used to live with the Palestinian members very good. It's not only in the past, even today, like the rabbi said in Iran. But take example, I myself, I was in Morocco. A beautiful life. It's no problem with Jewish people. I come there, I pass over the borders. Muslim people come with the children to me. Please, Rabbi, bless my children. It's unbelievable. They have no hatred against Jews. No hatred at all against Jews. They have a problem with occupiers. So it's exactly the opposite. I mean, when you look in the history, we live in the Muslim countries much better than the rest of the world. So it's just one of the tactics, of the tricks what the Zionists use to take in all the Jewish people into their agenda. They say, even you don't like Zionism, however, you have to come to us because we will protect you. And without us, the Palestinians want to throw all the Jews into the sea. This is all false propaganda. It's completely untrue. Like the rabbi said, the Palestinians have a problem with occupiers, not with Jews at all. Completely not. And both parties, Fatah and Hamas, declared it many times that they have no problem with Jews when they will take over the land, hopefully very soon, and on a peaceful way, like the rabbi said. They say they will have no problem with Jewish people at all. They have a problem with occupiers. As long Jewish people have no aspirations to take over the land, they are very welcome. So it's very hypocritically to say that AntiZionism is antisemitism. It's completely false. I mean, I can say personally that I know Jeremy Corbyn for many years. And I work together with him and he helped out many times the Jewish community where I live in London, in Stamford Hill. He helps out many times and have no any feelings against Jews. That's only Zionist propaganda what they try to do this.
Right. So I remember from previous conversations you used to mention that on religious days and so forth, the Muslim community, they would like babysit the Jewish kids and vice
This is
versa.
something what my mother told me. She remembered. She lived in Palestine for years. She remembered that the Muslim children come over. My mother is already 85, and she remembered that the Muslim children used to come to her house, and they go to the Muslim neighbors. They live together. They have no problem with each other.
So do you think that kind of relationship can come back into existence because of the tension?
100%. Even you can see that today, after all the 73 years of killing, exiling so many Muslim people from the land, still, give a look. I come here between a few Muslim people here. I'm welcome here. I feel welcome here. I feel welcome, and every time I come many times to mosques and speaking in mosques and in universities and other places where I'm going to speak, I feel so much comfortable. I feel I'm welcome there because they have no problem with Jews. They have a problem with occupiers. When they understand I'm not from the occupiers, they welcome me very nice. I can say also, give a look in my neighborhood in Stamford Hill. We live there thousands of Jews, side by side with thousands of Muslims. There are minicabs. All 200 minicabs what are driving there are Muslim people. We're sending the small children of 2-3 years with the Muslim people in school. I live already in Stamford Hill 35 years. I never hear even one incident. And even in the most hottest times, if you remember, for 20 years ago, then somebody calls Goldstein, Baruch Goldstein, make a massacre in the, how do you call it, the
Masjid Ibrahim.
Morris Machpelah in Hebron.
In Hebron?
Yes.
Masjid Khalil Ibrahim.
Yes, there. And it was very hot in the world. And we're going out to many demonstrations there. Then in that time, I think it's already 30 years, maybe 30 years ago, something like that. But it's no problem because the Muslim people knows that Jewish people, when I speak about Jewish people, I'm speaking about the real Jewish people who are following the Torah, not somebody who would call themselves Jews. Yes, I mean, the Zionists also call themselves Jews. It looks like if somebody will call himself a Muslim, but he don't believe in God. So what he will say? I'm sorry, you can call which name ever you want, but you are not a Muslim. The same thing. I'm speaking about Jewish people, but observing the Torah. People looks like me, this type of people, as you are more religious, as more you're going away from Zionism. And the Muslim people in Stamford Hill knows that. And because of that, there are no incidents, anything, there in Stamford Hill. I bring it only for example that it's not a matter of anti-Semitism at all. It's a matter of anti-occupation, anti-killing innocent men, women, children. And
if I can add to that.
Yeah.
In Palestine itself, up to this present time, there are members of the Jewish community who go out to the West Bank, to Ramallah, and meet Palestinians on a most cordial basis and get on very well because they know they can trust them. Those who come there, they have to get there with they're not supposed to go there, but they go around the back way and they manage to get in there. And they're treated with the greatest respect and the greatest cordiality. That's nowadays in Palestine with the conflict that's going on, and they are treated very well. There's up to very recently there have been meetings of Jewish people going to meet with.
Just last week.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd like to add is that this question of Jeremy Corbyn, this whole question in this country now of considering anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism, there's only one word that will describe it: utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. That's all it is. But it's amazing how people of great intelligence have been able to accept that. They don't see, it's so obvious, the fact that the Zionist state behaves in a very bad way politically, and they ignore it completely. And the question of confusing anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism is completely nonsensical. But that's how it is.
Okay. So from members of the Jewish community, what do you believe is the solution? What should happen to what is now known as Israel? And what should happen to the people living there and the governance? What do you see is the solution?
Give a look. I'm coming from the perspective of the Torah, not a political one. But I will speak about political also. But from the Torah, it's written in the Torah, I will quote it in Numbers 14, verse 41, a similar situation when God take us out, Jewish people, from Egypt. He wants to take them into the Holy Land. And something happened in the middle that God decides, no, they have to stay in the desert for 40 years. I'm sure many people read it in the Torah, and they have to stay in the desert 40 years. Then those Jewish people that say, no, we want to go up. We want to rebel against the Almighty. We want to go up. So Prophet Moses say to them, why do you rebel against the Almighty? You will never succeed. The Torah, it's the word of God. This is not only for that time, this is forever. Every word what is written in the Torah, this is forever and for all the years. In today's situation, as long as the state of Israel is a rebellion against the Almighty, I'm sure that the Rabbi explained it before, but I will say it in very short. It's very simple, because God, we gone out in exile by the word of God, not because we were weak. The reason why we are in exile, because God sent us in exile. In the proof of that, you can see in the books of the prophets. Firstly, when you look in the Torah, you see that it's written many times in the Torah, One of them is in a portion of Kriyas Shema, what we say every day. It's called Hishomru lechem pen yifte levavchem v'avadetem satem avadetem limachem shtach vitzim lehem. V'chru af Hashem bochem v'rutzach es hashemayim v'lo yemuta v'adum lo yisitu enzvila v'avadetem meheru ma'alu etz hatoivu. That God said in the Torah that I promise you the Holy Land, but only under certain conditions, if you keep a high level of life, a high moral of life, and if not, you will be exiled of the land. And that's what's happened. And when you look in the books of the prophets, especially in Yirmiyahu, Ezekiel, Yeshayahu, especially Yirmiyahu, he was at the time, the actual time when we gone out of exile. You see that God warns the Jewish people to repent, and if not, they will be exiled. Now, God sent us into exile. Going out of exile is a rebellion against the Almighty. I'll give you an example. If you have a child, he is bad, you told him, I punish you, stay 10 minutes in the corner. He coming out. What means that? That means, couldn't care less about your punishment, I do whatever I want. The same thing, Jewish people, if God sent them in exile, and they're going out of exile by force, this is a rebellion against the Almighty. People who are believing in God cannot do such a thing. I'm sure it's not new, the Rabbi already explained that. But I just coming in the middle of the words, what I say, as long as the state of Israel is a rebellion against the Almighty, there cannot be succeed. And there will come to an end. We hope and pray for a peaceful end, but it's 100% it will come to an end. We don't believe in a two-state solution at all, because Jewish people in today's day, we are not allowed to rule even 1 inch of any land. We have to stay in exile and wait for the redemption of God, not to go out of exile by force. So the state of Israel will come to an end, and the whole state, from the river to the sea, will go back to the Palestinians. And really, this is the only solution, because now we come to the practical point of view. I'm sure the Rabbi explained it already. I mean, if you rob away something you rob away the house, you get from your father a house, somebody take it away, then okay, let's make 2 states. Take half and half. What means that half and half? It's my house, give it me back in full. As long as you will not give it back in full, there will not be an end of this fire. And also, this is the truth. The wrongness what have been done. Sorry, my English is not so good. The wrongness what have been done for the Palestinian people should be rectified. And that means to give them back the whole land. Even the Zionists have no right to claim any land. Like I told you, we have to stay in exile. But even if they want to say, okay, we have a Holocaust, we were killed, we need a land, it's not true, like the Rabbi explained. But however, even if you go on that, why the Palestinians have to pay the bill what the Nazis has been done? I mean, this wrongness should be rectified. And now give a look just the 2 facts. The state of Israel is already 73 years, nearly 73, 74 years. How many states on the world has been created in that time? Tens, if not hundreds. And everybody have peace. The only place is the state of Israel. There is no peace, even 1 single day. This is a finger of God to show you have no peace. You will never have peace up to the end when they will be dismantled. We hope and pray for a peaceful dismantlement.
Okay. Sorry, did you
From a practical point of view, I think you asked what should be done in the meanwhile. Ideally, and this is, it will be looked on as a very, very minority view, but if one looks at it objectively and honestly, what have the Orthodox Jews, what do they have to do? Ideally, the Orthodox anti-Zionist Jews should come out of the state of Israel. There are many who can't. It's not possible, but there are many who do. They should at least advocate complete ignoring of the Zionist regime. if the Orthodox Jews came out and left them to their own, they wouldn't last very long. That's just by the way. It's it's an idealistic idea that not likely that it will take place without the hand of the Almighty. But that is the ideal thing that should take place.
Okay.
And that's what people say, that it's dangerous if the state of Israel becomes dismantled. Palestinians want to kill all the Jews. They spoke already about that. It's completely false propaganda. We can live alongside with the Palestinians with no problem at all. We can live side by side, Jews and Muslims. The Palestinian government have no, even not the people, have no problem with Jews as Jews. They have problem with occupiers.
Okay. So the last question before we go to the public for myself is, in effect, you believe that until Jewish people come closer to God and perfect their religion, they're in exile. But eventually, once that state, spiritual state is achieved, or with the coming of the Messiah or the building of the third temple, the end result would be, maybe without the killing and stuff, but the end result, would that not be the same, i.e. a Jewish state? It might not be called Israel or have that same format, but the end product is the building of the third temple on what the Muslims know as Masjid al-Aqsa, the coming of the Messiah, and the governance of Jews or Judaic law over that land.
Give a look. I mean,
I've been asked this question many times. It's not an easy question to answer, but I'll answer it this way. We have a belief, which we are taught, as part of our teaching. And the time will come when as you say, the Jewish people will have a governance in Palestine. That belief might be acceptable or non-acceptable to the world at large. We say, you don't have to accept it, it's up to you. One thing, we know we have that belief. One thing is certain, we will never force the issue. This is the essential point. We will never force the issue. Our belief is that a time will come when it will be willingly accepted by the world at large. You can accept that belief or you cannot accept it. That's up to you. That's our belief. But meanwhile, we do not in any way would force the issue. So I say, forget that. What will happen in the end? We have our belief what will happen. You have your own, except we don't have to go into that. We look at the here and now. The here and now is that for the Jewish people to rule in Palestine is against our Torah, against our teaching, and it is the whole cause of the disaster of the underlying cause of strife in the Middle East is the very existence of the idea of having a Jewish state in Palestine now.
I will just explain at the same thing what the rabbi said, but in my words, I mean, if you think about Messiah, about the third temple, this is not something what everybody can say what he wants about Messiah. You have to look in the books of prophets, what means that Messiah? I mean, as people look at Messiah, he will be a strong man, he will come down, he will force the whole world. In our teachings, when you look at Messiah, it's only roichev ala chamoyer. That means a poor man coming on a white donkey. Really, we don't understand what it means. Today is no donkeys. We don't understand. But this is the words of the prophets. So, but how we describe the Messiah? Messiah will not be somebody with big muscles. When Messiah will come, when you look in the books of the prophets, he will bring down much spiritual from the heaven into the heart of the people. not only into me and you and everybody here. And the time of Messiah come, if you look in Psalms chapter 97, it's written, Hashem molach togel ha'oretz, yismechu iyim rabim. When Messiah will arrive, all the people on the world will be in peace. Everybody will be happy. It's true. I know, I'm sorry, I don't know the Muslim religion, the Christian religion, but you believe also in some kind of Messiah. And the Christian also believe in some kind of Messiah. You believe that everybody will become Muslims. The Christian will believe everybody will serve God on their way. The same thing we Jews believe, everybody will serve the same God on our way. But no, there will be no force. In the same way the Rabbi said, it will come down spiritual from the heaven into the heart of all the people. All of us will go up to Jerusalem to serve the same God in harmony and peace. There will be no hatred. We will not be then on two sides on the fence. We will be on one side of the fence. We will have together one heart to God. This is what we describe as for Messiah. And about the third temple, it's also the same thing. Many people asking me this question. You believe in the third temple? Which place it will be? On the same place as Al-Aqsa. So what's going to happen with the mosque there? I told them the same thing. We don't know what's going to happen when Messiah will arrive. In our books it's written that Messiah will arrive. The third temple, we will not build it with a hand. It will come down from the heaven, a finished temple from fire. Now, we don't understand what it means. Nobody can go into fire. You can't serve God in a fire. We don't understand the words of the prophets. When the time will come, then we will see what's going on. We don't know. But this is what is written. This is something what's written. The main thing is what the Rabbi said. We have this belief for centuries, since God gave us the Torah on the Mount Sinai. The Muslims have their belief, 1500 years, something. I'm sorry, I don't know their history. Yes, the Muslims know very well the Jewish belief all the years, and they have no problem with Jews. They treat Jews very good. We live all the time in Muslim countries, and they know that we have our belief. Because the belief is not the problem. The problem is the forcing. As long as we don't force, we say, Messiah will bring down spiritual. In the same as you believe that everybody will become Muslims or will agree with the Muslim way, we believe that everybody will agree with the way of the Jews or the way of the Torah. But it will be willingly from everybody in the heart of people. And like the Rabbi say, you don't have to accept it. But this is the thing what we believe. And the Muslims knows that for hundreds of years, and that they didn't make them any problem. The problem here is occupation. Don't mix the belief with a religion with a materialistic occupation. The problem here is occupation and not the religion and not our belief.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll now open up the platform for the audience to ask any questions. So just raise your hand. First hand to go.
I was hoping that when you were questioning that my question would be asked, and I wouldn't need to ask it. But my question is, I feel for the Jews, himself he said that they were exiled. But when I went to Jerusalem, Palestine, Israel, I saw the Holocaust reminder at the airport. And I'm thinking, okay, then if this is their issue at the moment, they're reminding everybody about the Holocaust, then why not, while they're in this situation that they don't have a home to stay, why don't everybody get together and send them back to Germany, even if it's a little place, because that's where the problem came from, and they're not in this situation. Why is Britain or whoever send them to Palestine? They agreed themselves that God themselves would build them a temple and call them Palestine, and they'll live there happily ever after. But in the meantime,
Sister, what's the question?
Germany? Why not Germany? Why do they want to not go to Germany? Because they were exiled from Germany.
So I think the question is, why was the Zionist state established in Palestine as opposed to Germany?
Yeah, well, you have a very good point. That's exactly what we say. The fact that the Jewish people were badly treated, terribly treated by the Germans, is not the fault of the Palestinians. And why should the Palestinians suffer because of suffering of the Jews? You have a very good point, and I can only accept what you say. The only thing is that now, if peace were to come about, and hopefully it will come about, it might not be practical, but it might be necessary. Sometimes when things are not practical, they still have to be done. You're quite right, really. Ideally, it's the people who caused the problem, or the place where the problem took place, that's where the problem should be rectified. And that is why, one of the reasons why authentic Orthodox Jews oppose the whole idea of Zionism.
Okay, next
So
question.
can I just respond to that question? Because it's not just Germany. So Jews from all over the world have gone to Israel. So if you're going to send them back, well, you've got the Ethiopian Jews, you've got Jews from all over the world who went there as a sanctuary from persecution just because they're Jews. So although I'm a Christian background, the Christian treatment of Jews and Muslims has been horrific over the centuries. So it's not just Germany. This is a problem that the Jewish people have faced.
Okay. Question.
Are you asking a question?
No,
I was responding to why not Germany.
Yes.
So it's not just Germany that you can send Jews back to. They come from all over Eastern Europe, all over the world to Israel. So,
But I must just add to what you said. Most of the Jews who came to Palestine in recent years, because of what appears to be persecution in the United World, that persecution only came about after the formation of the Zionist state. They lived peacefully in the other lands until the advent of Zionism. It's only the Zionists that actually exacerbated that situation.
Okay. Yes.
Shalom, Rabbi. Thank you for coming. I've got a non-political question. I've got two. Why does he mention sects, such as those from the Chabad or the Haredim, wear the fedora or the shtreimel to the extent that it's almost like a mitzvah, that if they didn't wear that hat, they're seen as though they're not Jewish, such that something that's a cultural appropriation from Eastern Europe is now seen as a part of being Jewish?
I'm not quite clear of your question.
So I think what he's trying to say is, you know how, for example, the dress sense and the hat,
Right.
this is something that came on in later Judaism through certain rabbis and so forth. And I think he's posing that these are cultural elements for certain tribes of the Jewish people who lived in Europe. Why is that now identified simultaneously with being Jewish?
The mode of dress is a peripheral matter. The Jewish believe certain basic items of belief. There are 13 elements of belief. We have our basic teachings, which goes back thousands of years. We have our literature showing that. Over the years that the Jewish people have been in exile in different countries, so certain modes of dress have developed, but it's not an essential part of the Jewish identity. The essential part of the Jewish identity is keeping to the Jewish religion. The mode of dress, the aspect of mode of dress which is part of the religion is that we have a distinctive mode of dress. What that distinctive mode of dress is not always the same to the people. It depends where people have come from. A certain distinctive mode is developed in one country and another distinctive mode has developed in another country. But part of our religion is that Jewish people have a distinctive mode of dress. That is accepted by everyone. That is part of our Torah. The Jewish people have their own mode of dress.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that My question is, currently the issue of Palestine is portrayed as Muslim-Jews conflict. However, if we look back prior to 1917, Palestine, Jews, Muslim and Christians lived together without any problems or any issues. And the spoken language, Arabic, while possibly between Jews themselves, they learned Hebrew as well and communicated with Hebrew. But the language in the society there was Arabic and everyone living together. So would it be more correct to say the current conflict is an Israeli-Arab conflict rather than Jews-Muslim conflict? Would you agree with this argument, or do you have to continue?
Yes, I would agree with it. But it goes further. It's because it's become an Israeli-Arab conflict because of the fact that the Israelis, as Rabbi Beck says, they are the occupiers. They've settled them up. They've taken somebody else's land away. So obviously you have conflict. But that's nothing to do with, as you quite rightly say, prior to the state of Israel, the Jews and Muslims and any occupants of Palestine lived in peace.
Okay. Next question, Tom.
Thanks for your talk. The question is, from the orthodox viewpoint of Jewish people living in exile and God promising the Mashiach to come and liberate them, this promise was only through in the Hebrew Bible through Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses. It's a family promise that's come down through heredity, right? So at what point do we distinguish Judaism as a religion or an ethnicity?
So the question is, because the Jewish faith was come through prophets from a particular family line, how would you distinguish between the Jewish religion and Jewish being an ethnicity, as in the chosen people from the children of Israel?
Okay, our teaching is that the Torah, that's part of us, that's our identity. Our teaching is we believe what's written in the scriptures was revealed at Sinai about 3,500 years ago. And it was, we're told, that it was given to the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's our teaching. We are told that we are given a special mission, not chosen. It was, yes, chosen, but not chosen. Explain what I mean. We're not, we don't claim any special superiority. We claim that we've been given a task to live our lives in a certain way, and in that way be an example to the rest of the world. We were chosen to have a task, and how to give an example. You don't criticize a policeman, let's say, for being a policeman. He's been appointed to do his job, and he has to do his job. We're not policemen. I just give that as an example. But the idea is that the Jewish people, the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, were singled out to live their lives in a certain way in accordance with the Torah. We don't have a missionary idea. We don't expect the whole world to become Jewish people or to accept or to keep the Torah. That we are taught that we were given the Torah to live our lives in a certain way, and in that way be an example to the world at large, and in that way be able to help the world be at peace with each other.
Really, I haven't got to add what the rabbi said, but I will say that the chosen people is in any way not something what have to do with ethnic or with racism or anything. Because everybody in reality can convert to Judaism. Judaism is a religion. I will give you an example of Islam. If I understand good, Islam is a religion. You can be a black, you can be a white, you can be Chinese, Japanese, whatever you want. You believe in this religion, you are a Muslim. When you've gone away from this religion, you can call yourself Muslim, but you are not. You don't believe in them. You have still obligation maybe to keep the Muslim religion. The same thing about Judaism. Everybody can join that. Everybody can go away from that. I must say, when I say they can go away from that. Once you are a Jew, or by birth, or by conversion, you have obligation to keep this religion. You can't go away. When you come to the other world, there will be questions for that. Why you didn't keep the Jewish religion? But in the Jewish religion, when you look, it say in Halacha, it say that a Jew would don't keep Shabbos openly, let's say. Shabbos is the 7th day, what we're keeping. Then he's not counting as a Jew. So there is no difference. There is in any way not an issue of racism or an issue of ethnic groups. Because a Jew can be from whichever color, from whichever country on the world. So this is just to clarify. This is what the Zionists try to transform Jewish people from a religion into a nationality. Because they don't believe in the religion, they don't believe in God. The founder of Zionism was Theodor Herzl. He was an atheist. He didn't make even a circumcision for his own son, and he was proud of that. So he was a non-believer. So he looked with completely different eyes on the whole issue. He looks of Jews as a nationality. It's completely wrong. It's wrong from the beginning. It's wrong from the root. Judaism is not a nationality. Judaism is a religion. Chosen people, the same thing. Like the rabbi said, chosen that we are obligated by God to keep a high moral of life and to learn the world, the way of life, how to live. Sorry for my English, it's not so good. But we are chosen to serve God closer. We have 613 commandments. Gentiles have only 7. And we have 613. We have to serve God in a closer way. But this is in no any way a racist issue or ethnic issue. This is a religion.
Right, next question, we'll take one from the sisters.
You are explaining about the Zionism and Judaism. That's a very good explanation. You do understand the difference between that. And this Theodor Herzl, you're talking about him. I have read something about him. As you're saying that he was atheist. Yet people followed him, and then the state of Israel was formed. And obviously it was not in one day or 1 year. It took from Zionist movement started, I think it was
125 years.
1890 something, 96 or 97, about that time. And then 1947 was the time when the Jewish state was formed. So it's almost 50 years. And then whole planning and the things were going on. People have moved from whole Europe and all around the world to the lands of Palestine to establish this state. The question is that while everything was happening, obviously the Muslims were under the British rule or the French rule, or they were almost colonized, and they didn't have any say in this matter. And the state was formed, and no government was there to support Muslims or to stop this. And that's where we see that why this sort of robbery, if we say, that happened, that the state of Israel was formed and the Palestinian was, since then they've been persecuted. very well agree with you that you are.
Sorry, sister, what's the question?
Yeah, sorry. The question is that you are doing something, but where are we going? Where are we looking at any solutions, or have you looked at in the, we can't look in the future, but any solutions after this whole talk? That's what.
So I think the question is, what, in terms of the practical solution, do you think you guys can help work for?
There is a practical solution, as Rabbi Beck mentioned. The practical solution would be, I often say, that there's one sentence that people who have the power to say it could say and would stop any strife in Palestine whatsoever. There's one sentence. If the people in power would say, we are prepared to sit down and discuss the peaceful dissolution of the Zionist state of Israel. It might take 20, 30 years, but at least that one sentence would stop any further violence, would stop everything. And that would, the idea would be to have a state, ideally, looking at it politically. I mean, we can't tell the Almighty what to do, but looking at it politically, if it was a state, the fact is that all the people who are living there now, you've got Palestinians, you've got Jewish people, if it was a state for all its inhabitants with a democratic government, that would be a solution. But that's not for us to control.
Can I add something to it? I think what my friend said, the solution lies in the hands of this government. They created that state. Balfour Declaration was created and breathed by this government, and the solution lies within their hands and America's hands. And diaspora was done. I mean, you all know that's Almighty's. We know that Almighty's work. They were in exile, but the actual Balfour Declaration is a man-made creation.
Thank you, sister. We just want to take the questions from loads of hands up. So I do appreciate your comments. I just want to gain as many as I can. Marna, so you had your hand.
Yeah, my question would have been the Israel-Palestine issue is one which comes up in a Muslim's life more than too often. Every few months, motions go high and they come down. As rabbis, what advice would you give? We would probably understand that you understand the situation internally and probably better than ourselves. What advice would you give to Muslims in regards to trying to find a solution locally here and in Palestine? What could we do to make a difference?
Well, I think it would be important for you among your own communities to spread the word that the message that we're trying to spread today, that not all Jews are Zionists. Zionism and Judaism are two different things. Don't blame all the Jewish people for the crimes of the Zionists. And they have to realize that there are within the Jewish people who understand the problem. And the fact that you have others, the Zionists, don't behave as they should in any way, but that should not be treated as a Jewish crime, but as a Zionist crime. And to realize that as I said, the basic Jewish approach is the one that we've been trying to talk about today.
Sorry,
I mean, what I can add just to this, it's not too much what we small people can do, but really what we're doing now, this is very important, and this can have very much outcomes. I mean, one of the Israeli very strong power, very strong propaganda weapon what they have is to bring in the mind of people that Jews and Muslims can't live together. The Muslims want to kill all the Jews, and the Jews are in danger. and this rectify them in the eyes on the wall. Why they give them the rectify, why the justification to have the state, even if it's not right, okay, they didn't have to take it away from the Palestinians. But however, now look just the facts today. The facts today is the Muslims wants to kill all the Jews. So you must have your own country to defend yourself. I mean, from the side what the rabbi said already, that the state of Israel is no in any way a help of the Jewish people, completely not. I mean, this only brings problems for Jewish people in the state of Israel and all over the world. I mean, like the rabbi said, Rabbi Cohen said that the most dangerous place for Jews today, not to speak for Palestinians, is in the state of Israel. I live here in England already 35 years. I can tell you, I don't know how an English soldier looks like. I never saw them. But in Israel, a small child of 2 years knows already all type of weapons, of tanks, of guns, of everything they know. Because it's a very dangerous place. So the Zionists say this propaganda, they want to protect Jews. This is beside of that, it's not a protection of Jews. They don't protect us of anti-Semitism over the world. They're just creating anti-Semitism over the world, all over the world. However, but this what the world rectify them to have the state is the false propaganda the Muslims wants to kill the Jews. When we show for the world, we can see the Jews with Muslims together. This breaks them by the roots. This shows for the world it's false. We can live together. I mean, we're going to speak many times in mosques, in universities, even with some gathering of people. Everybody have friends. Everybody can send the pictures. They can download from our website. It's nkusa.org. nkusa.org. I can give cards when I finish. I can give cards to everybody who wants. But they can download pictures, spread it out on social media. Everybody on his way in social media, what he can spread out. On YouTube, everybody can do that. We have leaflets, what we can give for people. Everybody who is interested, take that, spread it out, to show for the world it's false. The problem is not an issue of Muslims and Jews, it's a problem of occupiers. And this, when you do this in much, this will cut the Zionist justification by the root.
Just like to add one more thing. One of the basic items of propaganda which the Zionists have tried to do, and they still do the whole time, is to set themselves up as the representatives of the Jewish people, which is totally false. They don't represent the Jewish people in any way. They represent themselves. And they have no right to speak in the name of the Jewish people at large.
Okay. Go to the next question.
Do you know how Muslims have scarves and stuff? Do the Jews have anything likewise in which symbolise their religion in clothing, like which they wear generally?
For women?
No, just generally.
Okay. So, as the sister's asking, like Muslim women will have hijabs, or there might be some kind of clothing identification for Muslims. What kind of dress sense or identification do you have in the Jewish community for men and women?
For women or men and women?
Both.
Well, one of the basic tenets of our religion, which you will understand very well, is decency. The women have to dress in a decent way, and not in any way which is suggestive or inciting. We don't have special garments which have to be...
I think the indication might be like how Jewish women after they're married might need to cover their hair.
Yes, that's right, yeah. But that's one of the aspects of it. Any aspect of decency and modesty, that is the hallmark of the true Jewish woman, and you will understand that. From a Muslim point of view, you will also understand that.
Okay, next question. The brother in the middle. Yeah.
My question is, so what would the Shaykh do when he borders when he establishes just rule on earth and one. So, about the Talmud, is it true that the book is a higher authority than the Tanakh?
I didn't get that. Something about the Messiah.
Sorry?
You were reading, like, I couldn't hear you loud enough.
Okay, so what I was saying is, all the Mashiach that comes, where will he establish the borders when he establishes just rule on earth? And about the Talmud, is it true that the book is a higher authority than the Tanakh?
So when the Messiah comes, where will the boundaries be of the land? And then he mentioned something about the Torah being a higher authority than the Talmud.
I personally don't like to get involved in that discussion for the simple reason we don't know. We are told the Messiah, we are taught, the Messiah will come, the world will be just, it will be with the willing acceptance of everybody in the world. He will certainly establish borders as they should be if they need to be. We don't need to get involved in the details at this stage. We pray that the time will come quickly when he will appear and show us exactly what we have to do.
Well, it isn't exactly, didn't he promise Palestine for the Jews?
Yes, this is true. But again, as I mentioned earlier, only it will be something the promise will be fulfilled in a way which will be fully accepted and willingly accepted by everybody. That's our belief. As I've said earlier, if you don't like it, okay. But we're not going to force it. We don't force it. Our belief is that time will come when you will all say yes. That's how it has to be.
Well, and what about the Talmud? Do you think it's a higher book than the Tanakh?
Well, our teaching is the Torah. So the Torah comprises the written scriptures and also a vast body of oral teaching. To explain, we can't understand written scriptures just on their own. That the meaning of the written scriptures is only understood by the oral, which later been written down afterwards, by the oral teachings in the Talmud. So it's all one. There's no difference. It's all one. The Torah comprises the written scriptures and the oral teachings, which are embodied in the Talmud. And that all goes together. We can't separate it.
It's about the question of Messiah. I just add one word, what I said already, but you can see that in very many verses, that verse what I told you in Psalms 97, Hashem Malach Togei La'oretz, when Messiah will arrive, everybody will happy. Yismachu iyim rabim. All the people on the world will be happy. Everything. Messiah will not be a power of hands. He will be a power of spirit. It's come into the heart of our people. And we will not be on two sides on the coin. We will be on the same side on the coin. Everybody in the world will happy, will accept what Messiah will do. The Messiah is not a matter of power, of hands power. Messiah is a matter of the power of the Almighty. A spiritual power, a power of the Almighty. But everybody will recognize in the same God. You believe in your way. The Christians believe in their way. We believe in our way. Okay, but everybody will agree to the same thing.
Okay, next question, Shah.
I don't think came to understand the true message of Judaism and support the work that you're doing. But within the Jewish community, are you getting instances where there's a lot of Zionists who are converting back to orthodox Judaism and understanding that Zionism is wrong?
So I suppose the question is, when you're talking amongst your own community, do you have many Zionists that relinquish their views or the support for Israel and coming back to the views of Orthodox Judaism? How good is your propagation within your own community, in other words?
varies. A mixed reaction. It varies. Those who are prepared, there are many instances of people who have accepted and realized that what we say is correct, but not everywhere. If people are prepared to look at the matter objectively and honestly, without any preconceived notion, then they accept it. But the perfection still is a long way off.
But from the other side, I can say, give a look in our area, in Stamford Hill. I don't know, somebody was in Stamford Hill? Yes. So can I ask you a question? You was in Stamford Hill. In Stamford Hill is a community of thousands of Jews, hundreds of institutes. So I ask you the question, how many Israeli flags do you saw there? Zero. The same thing is in Manchester. The same thing you will find all over the world, where you will find a concentration. People looks like me. Even it's in New York, in upstate New York, you will look in Australia, you will look in Argentina, you will look in South Africa. Everywhere you have a concentration of Jewish people like us. Most of them, I can say, are anti-Zionists, and I can say that 95% are non-Zionist. That means many of them are strongly anti-Zionist, but even the other people that are not so anti, but they haven't got nothing to do with them. They have to do with their business, with their studies, with their children. It's not an issue at all. In my neighborhood in Stamford Hill, you can't raise up an Israeli flag. It's impossible. People will get very, very angry. So really, when you look on how we are accepted in the community, it depends how you look on that. As more religious a person is, as more he is against the state of Israel. It's ever exception. This is the settlers in the state of Israel. But I must say the settlers are not too much. They are 10,000, I don't know exactly the amount. They are not too much. They are very noisy. But they are not too much. They look like us, correct. But all over the world, even in Jerusalem itself, in the Holy Land itself, you have hundreds of thousands of Jewish people that are trying to boycotting the state. They don't take any benefits from them, and they don't go to the army. I mean, now we're fighting not to go in the army. The last 10 years, very strongly, in our youngsters, going many of them in the prisons rather than to go to the army. The rabbis say for people, don't go in the army. Even you will they will take you in the prison. Don't share the army. They don't take any benefits. They don't take part in the votes. And all over the world, people looks like me, almost of them are against the state of Israel, or at least non-Zionists.
The question of the settlers on the West Bank, they are aberrations. They are an aberration. They are not a true, in any way, a true representative of how Orthodox Jews. It is something which has developed. It's a cancer, literally, which has developed they've taken the nationalistic aspect of Zionism, as I mentioned earlier, and they bolted it on to Judaism. But they are aberration, they are mutation. It's not a true development as it should be.
Okay, next question. Carlton.
Firstly, I want to thank all of us here, and the panel in particular. Never do you see such dialogue and interaction. And there is no doubt that when we talk, and it's good that you say we just need to talk about how to put an end to things, and talking and openly asking questions and trying to understand other views is absolutely essential, and I love what's going on here. But two questions though. So the first is, do you realise, and then it's going to be followed by a bit of an explanation, so it's a bit of a cop-out. So do you realise that we are in a situation described in the book of Ezra? In the book of Ezra, Cyrus prophesied 150 years before he was born, says, the Lord God of heaven has given me all the kingdoms of the earth. Go back to Jerusalem, and the Messiah, the Almighty, that told me to build him an house in Jerusalem. He had no authority to do that, except that he says it came from the Almighty. And when they started building, there was much opposition to building in Israel. The prophecy was 70 years in captivity. We cannot do anything to stop the prophecies of the Almighty coming true. One of the prophecies was, you're going to be scattered throughout the world, I'm going to bring you back again. Now, you might think, well, he's going to come down in a ray of light and do it all himself. But in the same way, he used a non-Jewish king to make that declaration in the book of Ezra. Why can he not use the crazy people of Britain and America to make the declaration that will re-establish Israel? That's not saying we should justify the expansion and the violence, but do you realize that you're arguing against Cyrus, a non-Jew, made the declaration to re-establish Israel after 70 years of captivity?
Did you understand the question?
Yeah.
So
why can't we have the same situation now? Yes, you're trying to. Why should you asking? Why should the fact that the United States and the United Kingdom and other countries created the state of Israel shall be accepted as the will of God? Is that what
that's correct? Yes. I'm really arguing on behalf of the orthodox Jews who aren't here. So that's why.
I think he's trying to argue that the creation of Israel is the fulfillment of the prophecy.
Yeah. One basic thing we have now believe is that everything has to be with the authority, with the authority of the Almighty, and everything has to be based on prophetic guidance. We do not have today prophets as they were. The prophets who people on the level which we can't understand, and they actually had communication with the Almighty. We don't have that now. So all we can do is we have to go according to the teaching which the Torah told, that is, as it's been established. And that, when we talk about ourselves, that was something which was brought in by prophetic guidance. We don't have that prophetic guidance now. We can only go, the teaching of the Torah is that we are not allowed to come out of exile without with the power of our own hands. And also that the redemption, the eventual redemption will be in such a way that will be to the willing acceptance of everybody. As you can see, the state of Israel has not been created by the willing acceptance of everybody. So it's a different, you cannot compare it at all to the revelation of the idea of revelation, the idea of salvation, which Cyrus wanted to bring up.
I can also add that in many verses in the Torah, not in the Torah, in the books of the prophets, in the Talmud, what is very clear that the third redemption will not be man, but in the hands of man. It will be on a spiritual way. Miraculous. Yes, miraculous. A miraculous way. This is firstly, and I want to answer something deeply. I will try to answer it in 2 minutes. Think, what's the purpose of the world? What is the purpose of the coming of Messiah? The purpose of the world in general, and especially when Messiah will come, everybody will turn his face to God. Everybody will serve God. This is what Messiah will bring down. To have a state or not to have a state, or no, to have no state or yes state, this is a side thing. The main thing is that everybody from the whole world will together recognize the same God and fulfill, to save him. Now, just look what the Zionists are doing. The Zionists are atheists. They're taking away people from God. I tell you from Jewish history, They took away hundreds of thousands of Moroccan Jews, hundreds of thousands of Yemen Jews, hundreds of thousands of Jews of Algeria, of France, all over the world. But they take them away from the religion. They take them away from God. They make them from religious Jews, they make them completely atheist. The Zionists is doing exactly the opposite. They don't bring faith in God. They're bringing secularism on the world. They take away people from God. They're doing exactly the opposite what Messiah will do. The point is not the land or not land. Of course, the land will be a part of that, what Messiah will come. It will be a part. But the main thing is that Messiah will bring all the people close to God, to save God. It's exactly the opposite what the Zion is doing.
Can I have a quick response?
Carlton, they'll be behind so you can speak. Yeah, speak to that. What time is your train? Okay, we'll just take the last questioner, and then if anybody has questions, you can come and approach the rabbis and the representatives at the end. So then,
do you think the Palestinians have right to self-defense? Do you think the Palestinians have a right to self-defense?
do you believe the Palestinians have a right to self-defense against Israeli aggression?
I remember the Second World War, right? And everybody knows the history. When the Germans occupied France, so there were there were people who rebelled against them. What do they call them?
Maquis. Maquis. No, in France there was the Maquis.
The other brother, not partisans, but they were able to, nobody looked down on the fact that they took action against the occupiers, because obviously the occupiers had done wrong. Had Germany occupied England, the Churchill himself said, we'll fight them on the beaches, we'll break them up. Obviously, they had self-defense. The idea of self-defense was accepted, it had to be self-defense. The Palestinians consider that their state has been taken away from them. Obviously, nobody condones violence. We hope that everything can be solved without violence. But it's easy to understand their approach.
So I suppose the question is, would you support their self-defense?
I don't like to say I would support, because it means I'm supporting violence. I don't like to support violence, but we can understand it. If you want to avoid violence, you have to take away the cause of the violence. The cause of the self-defense which they want to indulge in is because they've been occupied, because they've had the land taken over. I don't want to say I support it, because supporting means I'm supporting violence, I'm supporting people being killed and so on. Nobody wants to say that. But it's very understandable what they are doing.
Okay. So I'd just like to invite Maulana Nasser to give some concluding remarks for the program. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to approach the rabbis. They'll be here till then. Rabbi Cohen might need to leave, but Rabbi Beck and his colleagues will be here.